Welcome, everybody. This is UNESCO with Friends of the African Union and affiliated memberships. And we are going to talk today, starting off, talking about us as seniors and talking to the youth. We're going to give you a background briefing on Queen Mother Dr. Dolores Blakely's message to the youth as she continues to pray for the youth, starting on the 15th anniversary of the Million Man Youth March in 2013. And she's going to give you a background on her situation, where she comes from, and her situation currently. Queen Mother, Dr. Dolores Blakely, the floor is yours.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say to all of us that in the reflection of our ancestors and the state of the affairs of dealing with our young people and the engaging on such a day where you had us to watch, many of us, which I did today, of the space inventions, I would say, space exploration or space rediscovering, because nothing is new under the sun. And so watching it today, I thought of our brother and son, Ron McNair. I knew Dr. Ronald McNair, the astronaut, when the space shuttle blew up. And as my godbrother, and he was at my school, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, as a fellow, that I was involved in my first year of graduate school at MIT. And then from there, I went on to Harvard as the sister school to continue my education and receive my master's degree before I returned to Columbia University in the city and in the community of Harlem. And so I returned back to New York to continue. And with my engaging with Mother Africa, my godfather, my African Baba, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, and with my second Baba, which my first Baba put me in the hand of my second Baba who just passed, Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia. And I was with him 2019, laying eyes on him and watching him dance. And we just enjoyed each other in private sessions that I had with him. And what he said to Queen Mother Blakely, bring the children home, the prayers, and he blessed me, Kenneth Kaunda. I say all of that to say this, as a point of reference, as an elder and saying to the young people in particular, it is important and it's imperative that they begin to come to the elders, intergenerational, that I've been involved with my young people. And so I like to give always an overview how Queen Mother engaged herself with the elders, such as Queen Mother Audley Moore. And the list goes on in the local community of my engaging with the elders. It behooves the young people to comb us for our grace and wisdom and knowledge that we have been able to harvest, to pass on the legacy for them. And so Queen Mother wants the young people to fashion for the elders and how they must be engaged or protecting the elders, not only the intergenerational dialogue or communication with the elders, but also being involved with the lives of the elders, such as Queen Mother Blakely. I have been involved with young people for the last 52 years. It's been such a joy for me, being a Roman Catholic nun, which I taught in the nursery school, the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds in the nursery school, and then on to the kindergarten classes. And so, with me being involved with early childhood education, and then being involved with young people, students after school, which we call the after school program, is the day programs and after school programs, and with the New York Board of Education, of also being engaged with students at various level. And as time went on, with the New Future Foundation being developed and at the United Nations, as you know, as I stated, going on now about 52 years as a humanitarian. And what I want to say again to the youth, the young people, interfacing with the elders, you get to know how an elder become a child twice. If you never remember what Queen Mother had said, remember that. If you live long enough, you will become a child twice. So as an elder, which I am, going on 80, I am becoming a child twice. And since I'm becoming a child twice, I am very playful. So Queen Mother like being engaged, and I am engaged with young people from the United Nations and sharing my abilities with them. But I want you also to play with Queen Mother and share your abilities with her. You, the technical children on the superhighway, I still have my phone, my landline. I enjoy my landline. And enjoying my landline, I continue to do the things that is common to me and known to me. And I don't see the need of throwing it away, but to be a part of the superhighway, even watching the space program today, because of my god brother, Ron McNair, an astronaut, and being able to witness with the naked eyes of going up with a space shuttle and coming down, launching, landing on the same pad. So I'm saying again to the young people, we need you like you need us. You have skills and abilities that is unknown to Queen Mother, that I enjoy when you teach me like I teach you. So the intergeneration relationship is what I say, I declare from young people when they come to me. And as the Queen Mother, which they have named me, the Queen Mother of Hip Hop. So I'm going to put a pin there in this discussion with young people. And I'm looking forward to young people uh, being able to have this dialogue with Queen Mother. I am not interested in a monologue, but I'm interested in a dialogue with you. And so Queen Mother have joined this session just to have a dialogue with you. I yield the chair back to the chair, Daniels,
Thank
Chairman.
you, Queen Mother. We appreciate it. In terms of this dialogue, it will be going through UNESCO through this Monday. The sessions will be held at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each day. Today, we're going to get a briefing on the work with New Future Foundation, Friends of the African Union, and Cash Community Development on the 29th of April for the Indigenous Peoples Forum, in that historic work that was conducted that brought together the creation of the Indigenous Peoples Alliance. And to center that Indigenous Peoples Alliance headquarters in New York, around a building in Harlem. And so I would like for you maybe to tell people about that story about New Future Foundation, Shirley Chisholm, and how it came about in the building in Harlem on the Hamilton Estates.
Chairman Daniels, I think that you could sum it up in a few words. You know that I'm just finishing another book, which has been published, and it should be out for those who are interested in purchasing it very shortly. And with Queen Mother just coming back also from Africa, from a place called Goree Island. Again, the return home for the healing and the transformation. The building in Harlem, 477, is what Queen Mother called it. Over 40 years ago, I set up for women and children in need, not greed, but need. And over these years, I watched young people grow in this particular property, low income property in Harlem. And lo and behold, out of nowhere, they came to snatch or to steal the property because they believe no one is minding the stores of the elders. And I would say to young people, keep your eyes on your elders within your community. And we are vulnerable when we reach a certain age in our lives. And for over 40 some years, I would say almost 43 years, it seems to be, as a homesteader, taking an abandoned building, and now it's a diamond in the rough and the world wants it. Which, when I say the world, I mean the world of greed, predatory lending and mortgage fraud, think they could just come and seize it or take it from us because of we not having the means to fight like they can fight and take and snatch and steal from us. And I decide to make it my cause to been fighting them for over 13 years of this piece of property. And we must sustain it for the young people. The purpose of it was for mothers with children in need. If you know anything about New York City, and if I would go to the UN by the subway or the buses, especially by the subway, and in the evening coming back from 42nd Street in New York City, or the United Nations, and seeing the condition of our women with children in the middle of winter. And I was concerned to the point that I developed this property with no resources, but with the will that the Creator has given me to do so, and my sweat equity to have made it a reality, and for women to have enjoyed all these years. And its prime property, I call it a diamond in the rough, a property now that stands and it's worth over $50 million. Just where it's standing, it is in Alexander Hamilton Grange estate. I live on his farm. Grange means farmland. And Alexander Hamilton, as you know, is on the $10 bill in America. And when you think of Wall Street, and as I said to the counterpart of his family that is European or white, then I made it clear to them, I am the Black side. I am the African side of Alexander Hamilton Grange. His mother was a Black woman from Africa. He was born in the place called Nevis in the Caribbean. And so I claim the spirit of Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton, again, as my family, and I said to the family, if they do not believe me or the DNA, they can pull him up. They can pull him up from Trinity Church and take a strain of his hair and see that I am not his relative. And so they said to me, Queen Mother, we don't have to dig him up from Trinity Church and where he's lying in an estate there, the strain of his hair, but we would say you're part of our family. And so I went that far and I made it clear to all of them, I'm the only one living on his estate. And this is the farmland where I live of Alexander Hamilton Grains estate. And with me fighting to maintain this property, and I'm due in court this coming Thursday, I heard from the judge today, without fair representation of attorneys, because what elders you know, like Queen Mother, who do not have the means. But I believe that the Creator has given me the spirit to continue to fight them almost 14 years of predatory lending and mortgage fraud. And the United States government and our new leadership under President Joe Biden and his capable members of his cabinet must take up this issue. It is not Queen Mother alone that is fighting for her legacy to remain in Harlem, but others too are confronted with gentrification. And so Queen Mother have brought this plight to the United Nations against homelessness at our World Conference on Social Development and Sustainable Development of the United Nations. And I brought the issue of homelessness to the world. And so with that, a monument has been erected in my honor as a mother of social justice issue. And the artist came from Poland who masterminded this piece of art that is going around the world. Is called Queen Mother of Reality. And it is so huge. And I said to the artist, are you all trying to get rid of Queen Mother? Monuments are usually given when you're gone, but the monument that has been erected in my honor and dedicated for my work is such an honor in itself. And so for me to have laid eyes on this particular monument, Queen Mother Reality, you can go out and see it. And I see the mirror here before me, protecting mothers and being evicted. And that came for the conscience of an artist from Poland. And as you know, they believe in the Black Jesus, which that is my consciousness, and the Black Virgin Mary. And so a part of that journey of social justice, that is the battle that I'm continue to fight. And I'm asking the young people to join Queen Mother with this legacy that must be left for them. And so that's where Queen Mother is in the struggle against gentrification and appeal to those that have the means to be a part of this deliberation. Everyone has a right to food, have a right to shelter, and have a right of clothing from the elements of life. Those are the rights which are human rights that Queen Mother decide to stand and fight, and not to be intimidated or moved from the work that I have done in the Harlem community homesteading. So I invite all that hears my voice that I will be in the U.S. Court, federal court is where my case is, and to give in a strong oral argument that I will give this coming Thursday, the 29th, if I'm clear on the date, at 10:30 in New York, and at the courthouse.
So Queen
The
Mother,
U.S. courthouse is the elder which now is our ancestor, is Thurgood Marshall Courthouse, federal courthouse, that I will stand and be able to give an oral argument. And I'm looking forward to that with the help of those of you that have the skills to understand the law and how we can be able to turn it around, the injustice done against mothers and against the elders. And I'm standing as an elder and saying we have a right to life. And so that's why Queen Mother is fighting in this cause for against homelessness
Queen
within
Mother,
our community. And so I wanted to leave that with all of you, and I thank you.
I appreciate it, Queen Mother. And let me speak from that perspective in the Indigenous Peoples Alliance that on April 29th in the United Nations that was created out of the Indigenous Peoples Forum that was driven by people of African descent in America, combined with Native Americans, that from the work that was done in the United Nations in 2016 in the Indigenous Peoples Forum on the 115th, the 15th Indigenous Peoples Forum to this, the 20th, when the concept of the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, driven by African Americans and Native Americans, along with people, Indigenous people of the Americas and Indigenous people of Africa, as well as the Indigenous people of Asia and Oceania, that our ground zero over the next week is going to be at 477. And it's going to be based off of the work that today happened with the United States House of Representatives Committee on Financial Services under the chairmanship of Maxine Waters. And that the title of the hearing was Building Back a Better, More Equitable Housing Infrastructure for America, oversight of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And this work today, this 3-hour hearing, also featured legislation that included in the legislation over $1 billion for housing for Indigenous people, but also includes funding for supportive housing for Section 202 for seniors, over $928 million. Rental assistance, over $14 billion. Choice vouchers, $30 billion. And an increase in public housing to $3.5 billion. And this does not include the funding that is already in place through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, whereas we can shape financial instruments that leverage the agreements that have been put together with the National Community Reinvestment Coalition that apply to New York, that apply to this particular building, that we will, over the next week, working with our young people, working hopefully with young people from around the world who are now attending the UNESCO Center for Peace virtual and in-person summer camp through this next Monday. We will be meeting here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 1 hour, where we will, from this day forward, talk about the issues that the Indigenous Peoples Alliance put on the table in April and finalized on June 1st. And in that meeting, on the commemoration of 100 years ago of a massacre here in America, one of the things that was recognized was through the World Conference of Mayors, was the recognition of Queen Mother Dr. Dolores Blakely as the official honorary mayor of Harlem, New York. And that was accepted as a member in standing in the World Conference of Mayors. And that we, working together, the youth of the United Nations educational, scientific, cultural organizations, through their clubs, through their centers and associations across the world, but in particular, those here in the United States, that we would put together a solution that will be filed in support of the work of Queen Mother in her 52 years in the United Nations. And that we will bring together our seniors and our young people, working together with the housing and urban development, working together with governments at all levels in the state of New York in a public-private partnership that would put together a headquarters operation with New Future Foundation, EdFu, and other organizations that are in ECOSOC status in the United Nations. That as of this Thursday, when the General Assembly has a discussion on the midterm of the international decade for people of African descent, that we will make it an issue, as she has said, about housing, about feeding, about the intergenerational needs of people who have not. And what do we do here in America using the executive order of the President of the United States, Executive Order 13985, which is meant to address this historical wrongs, that we will bring together through the Indigenous Peoples Alliance a solution that is based in, starting in New York at 477, and that solution includes meeting the demands of the needs of women and children for housing, meeting the demands that there should be no one in America who goes to bed hungry. There should be no one in America who has a housing problem. If we are, as we say we are, the leading industrial nation in the world, that we are the leader of democracy and freedom, then are we not in this administration our brother's keeper? And if we are our brother's keeper, let us start in New York. Let us start in the city that is the host to the headquarters of the United Nations. Let us start in this historic estate, and that you should know that the Hamilton family, that in 1791, that Hamilton declared the type of capitalism that the United States would follow to this day, based off of the release in 1776, The Wealth of Nations. In this year, 2021, we look to, from this location, adjust that thought, because now what we have is corporate social responsibility. Now what we have is the guidance from the International Standards Organization 26,000, that we can shape the financial instruments on a regional basis that can be supportive of housing those who are unhoused, feeding those who are unfed, those who are in need of health care, based on making the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, making them local. And we're going to make them local through UNESCO's organizational infrastructure that allows the creation of clubs, centers, and associations as a formal organizational part of the organization. And we have a letter of intent in place to do that. And that Friends of the African Union and its infrastructural partners plan to do that over the next week in New York with New Future Foundation and others, so that by the next Thursday, the 29th of July, that Queen Mother, Dr. Dolores Blakely, is not walking into that courtroom without support that is on paper, that is submitted to the government at the judicial level and at the executive level, so that we would meet the requirements for taking this property back into the hands of the people, and that this property then will serve as a beacon of what we can do here in America, and that from America, what we can do as we in this year create a permanent forum on people of African descent, as mandated by the 106 nations who voted for it on December 31st, 2020. And that when the Congressional Black Caucus representative speaks on this Thursday at the UN General Assembly discussion on the midterm review of the International Decade for People of African Descent, that we have a framework that will be presented that I'm going to take a few minutes to go over with from the Indigenous Peoples Alliance work that was in the Indigenous Peoples Forum, okay, that was created on April 29th. And that is meant to face today's threats. But the current infrastructure that we know is not ready. But we know that the digital infrastructure can be put in place that provides a secure digital environment in command, control, communications, computing, connectivity, cryptology, and cash transactions for the world's indigenous peoples. First, as part of the permanent forum on people of African descent. We're calling on the youth of the world. This is what the world's youth live in. And that we think that together we can create an Indigenous Peoples Cooperative. That cooperative by August 25th, 2021 would join into the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, as well as cooperative movement worldwide, in line with the ethical values of honesty, openness, corporate social responsibility, and caring for others. Now, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, by that membership, brings to the table over $298 billion worth of bank-based community benefit agreements including the newest one and largest, an $88 billion agreement with PNC Bank. What we're going to do in talking to all these financial institutions that have solved that, we're going to give them a ground zero approach. We're going to say in New York at 477, we have a chance in which to put together the cooperative headquarters, which that would be able to deal with cross-cutting topics, such as developing intergenerational community wealth, creating an international trade program with African nations, creating safe communities, creating an affordable, sustainable housing program, and creating a smart living coalition that we deem called Smart Wise, and implementing and erasing the digital divide program that provides access to the best of class healthcare solutions, that is integrated in next generation civic infrastructure that addresses systematic racism, economic injustice, and advancing global human rights development while creating a next generation workforce. That this work builds, okay, on the indigenous people's ability to mobilize with the African diaspora, which is all people of African descent in the USA, because of the GDP of us as a people is such that if we join together here in America as Black folk, as red folk, as people of color, that as a cooperative, that to create a healthcare plan that we can, with the Indigenous Peoples Alliance and domestic Indigenous peoples, we can issue a plan of action. That's an update. It's an update to an already established Indigenous Peoples Plan for America. And on March 20th, 2021, we started this update. And this update is based on that right now, the Biden-Harris administration, as I said, is not only spending $1 billion on housing, but the estimated total tribal spending is $31 billion a year. Now, again, there has been a sea change in this based on a Supreme Court ruling. But think about this, $31 billion, but the US net worth as of June 2021 of $270 trillion. $270 trillion. And we're paying the previous owners of this land $31 billion a year. So what we proposed is through the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, through the US Department of Agriculture, a generational change. Okay, and that generational change is based on the idea that no one born hating another because the color of their skin or their background or their religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So said Nelson Mandela. And that the Indigenous Peoples Plan is both a capitalist-based solution. It is economic adjustment solved. It creates peace in the hood and jobs in the hood, as well as answers human rights questions, and all done within a digital currency. So we do this work based on the Obama-Biden 2015 United Nations periodic review, in which the United States classified there's over 300 different recommendations from around the world into 10 categories. And the number one category of human rights problems in that administration was civil rights, ethnic, and racial discrimination. The number two was criminal justice issues. And number three, indigenous issues. Now, the interesting part, when we created the Indigenous Peoples Plan in 2016 in the United Nations in conference room number 8 in a forum sponsored by New Future Foundation, the interesting part that plays out in 2021 is point number 10, treaties and other international rights mechanisms. So just to digress for a second, when the United States that is of to 1789, the country that we are in now, when it was formed and it was taking other people's lands, other sovereign nations. We took their lands, and that in many cases, we took their lands and paid them for it absurdly low amounts. Remember what I just said is our GDP value right now is $270 billion, and we're paying 31 billion, a year. I'm sorry, 270 trillion, and we're paying 31 billion. But the key thing is other Native American tribes entered into treaties with the US government where they did not sell their land. And so for those, we created under American law treaty rights, and treating them as sovereign conquered nations gave them, in code of our jurisprudence, rights. And for most cases, we violated those treaties. But there's over 550 federal tribes who are recognized, who have treaties, and among them are 5 tribes in Oklahoma. And those 5 tribes in Oklahoma were part of the Confederacy, those who are in rebellion against the United States, who thought that they could create a new country and keep the system of institutional slavery of African people, and they failed. And in 1866, the last of their combat commands were these 5 tribes in Oklahoma. Well, it was the Arkansas Territory then, but Oklahoma today. And they signed treaties with the United States government, which gave the members of those tribes who were either enslaved or members of families in those tribes through their system called freemen, gave them either the rights as free human beings or gave them the right to declare themselves as free human beings of Native American heritage. And because they, in their heritage as Africans, like Native Americans, had a collective historic responsibility to the land. That was the unique bonding that had the Native Americans and Africans had a collective response of ownership and care of the land. And that collective response was completely different than the Wealth of Nations published in 1776 and codified in American Capitalism by Alexander Hamilton in 1791. And the American dream is an individualistic dream, not a collective dream. And so the United States government, to address this collective thought process, of Native Americans created a commission called the Dawes Commission. And that commission then assigned the lands in Oklahoma and said that these lands that are on your reservation, we will assign them to individual people. And those individual people then who are members of your tribe will own 160 acres. And it turned out that there were Native Americans of African descent who ended up with 1.4 million square acres of what is eastern Oklahoma today. And those tribes tried to become a state with these members of their tribe and failed. But then a group of European settlers came in and said, we want to be a state also. But what we will do is we will cut a deal with you, the leadership of the tribes, and that you, with us, will make an application to be a state called Oklahoma, and we'll grant you the rights of a white man, just as long as you disavow the rights of membership to those in your tribe who are African descent, and treat them like we were going to treat all people of African descent, a second-class citizen. We are going to become a state, and we are going to become an apartheid state where the laws will disavow their right to vote and participate and exercise the rights of citizenship in the state. And that's what they did.
Yes.
That's what Congress allowed to come into being.
Yeah.
And so now in 2021, we have an administration who's addressing these issues by a president who, as vice president, when we address this in as a solution, that we addressed it, that understanding that the Indigenous Peoples Plan draws on the framework and authority used by the Black Folks Plan, and that we understand that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, never will.
Yes.
And so that coming together through the US State Department, which responded and for the Black Folks Plan in 2020, now in 2021, is an update for our partners in joint venture with the Black Folks Plan, the Indigenous Peoples Plan. And so the whole idea behind this is to address the damage incurred by past and current federal government actions. And so the idea is that originally in 2016, in November 24th, 2016, the Indigenous Peoples Plan for Native Americans, that and with a title read FAU and Cash Asset Development with the Congress of Black Native Americans $1 trillion Solution for Indigenous People. And it issued the answer, relative to what the United States said that the number one problem in 2015 in the Obama-Biden administration, civil rights, ethnic and racial discrimination as the number one problem. And number three was indigenous issues. And so when this happened, we have an idea that the Indigenous Peoples Plan is the wake-up call that the Biden administration can do for now. Because when you're talking about the American dream and American Indians, the whole question is the nightmare that they have not woken up to is because they lost all of their lands. And so that within the context of this, we started down this, on 14 July 2015 in the Hilton Hotel in Addis Ababa, when we proposed for Black folks a $5 trillion plan then for African Americans at the third International Conference on Financing for Development. And so what we proposed then, okay, is a use of proceeds in 2016. And the change is where we said My Brother's Keeper, a Native American Alliance. Now in 2021, this is the Indigenous Peoples Alliance Cooperative Capitalization. And that today in Oklahoma, at the Oklahoma Chamber, Native American Chamber of Commerce, that our partner, John Moss of Cash Community Development is addressing this. So that's what we are doing and what we have done. We appreciate your time for this hour and every day from 7 to 8 that we're going to do this and talking about the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, our relationship and how it was created. Okay. And so I'll answer a couple of questions. Yes, Mr. Andrews.
Oh, thank you, Queen Mother Blakely. This is Andrew Williams Jr., Prince Nanan Yao Andrew Williams Jr. So good to see you and speak with you again.
Yes,
In the chat, I put several links because with your demand for them to show you the money and give you the money, right now, you actually also have the power of the United Nations Global Compact standing behind you. So I'm asking you, through Herschel Daniels, to join free the United Nations Global Compact because they have outlined a 2021 through 2023 plan that I believe will allow and empower us to move forward. Herschel, I know it's close now to 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock your time, so I'll end there and turn it back over to you. But please download the chat for reference material that we can follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And tomorrow, for everyone, we will walk through the PowerPoint for the Indigenous Peoples Plan, the draft. So tomorrow is going to be a walkthrough. I appreciate your time, everyone. We'll see you back again tomorrow.
Thank you. Blessings.